Hi everyone and welcome to a new episode of Miriam Talks About Things. Now, today we have lots to talk about, so I think I'm just going to get started. And the first thing I want to talk to you about is the modules I booked for next semester, so what I'm going to study next semester, which is 2 weeks away. So usually we have like one specific day where we can start booking our modules, and it starts at 10 a.m. and for art history it's pretty important to just really go on there on 10 a.m. and try to get in. But it usually takes a very, very long time to even get into the system. But this time I logged myself in at 10 a.m. and got in immediately and had my modules all booked at 10 a.m. and 1 minute. So that was really great. And the modules I booked are 3 art history modules and 1 for popular culture, which is a lecture. And the other are seminars, and the first one is a module about Amsterdam and the cultural significance of art pieces and artworks for the city in the 16th and 17th century. I already know this professor from my Garvacho module last semester, so that's always cool, and I really enjoyed his style. And yeah, the next one is a module about the painter Raphael, and what's special about this module is that we are going to train ourselves in different methods of art history, so we are analyzing his work with different methods. And yeah, this is going to be super interesting. Then the last of the art history modules is one I'm taking on Wednesdays. The first one was Monday, the second Tuesday, and this one on Wednesday. But I don't have it every Wednesday. It's just like 5 times throughout the semester, and that is we are looking at artists and the art systems of the 20th century, and also especially its critique, and also, for example, the critique on representation, but also how the critique on art systems and institutions sort of became part of the institutions themselves, which is very interesting, especially if I want to work in a museum. Then the one for popular culture is on the history of everyday culture, so like how certain concepts of our daily life came to be. And this is also with a professor I'm already familiar with, and I really enjoy his style as well. So that's what's happening next semester. I'm really excited. I have classes from Monday through Thursday, except the Wednesday module is just 5 times throughout the semester. So yeah, if you have any questions, just ask in the comment section and I will keep you posted. Now, on to books. I would like to talk to you about what I've recently read and what I'm currently reading. Now, the first thing is the book I talked to you about in the last regular version of Miriam Talks About Things. And that is The Flatshare by Beth. And for me, that was a 5+ star, so that means it is my first favorite book of the year and a new all-time favorite. I find it really hard to sort of form my opinion on it eloquently. I personally thought that it was absolute perfection. I made my mom read it. She's currently reading the German edition of it, so that means something. And I know it might not be for everyone, and I do have a little bit of a hard time seeing someone not liking it. I just find it generally endearing, but again, I can see it that it's not for everyone, but it was definitely for me. And that was the case from page 1. I fell in love with the characters and the setting immediately, and from then on I loved every single page of it, and I really laughed out loud that much that I sometimes had to put the book down, but I also got sad and anxious for the character, and it was a really perfect blend of that. And again, I'm just not able to form any coherent thoughts. But I think Tiffy and Leon are officially some of my all-time favorite characters, and I did love, but I also did suffer with them. So yeah, if you don't remember from the last episode, this is basically the story about two people, Tiffy and Leon. Tiffy needs a cheap place to stay very quickly, and Leon needs the money and is also working night shifts. So he's just in need of the apartment during the day, and Tiffy needs a place to sleep. So it goes from there. I do definitely highly recommend it if you have this one on your radar. Now, the next one I read is Answering Back, edited by Carol and Duffy. This is a poetry collection, and I gave this one 4 stars. I also did sort of a musing type of post on my blog, so I will link that if you are into that. I looked sort of more into the concept behind this collection, so yeah, check it out if you're interested in it. Again, I give it 4 stars. The concept, however, behind this collection alone would get 5 stars from me. But as it is with many collections, they're like, especially by different contributors, which is the case here, I haven't really connected to every single poem. But the idea of like present poets answering back to poems of the past really got me thinking, as you can see by my blog post. And one thing I keep on thinking when I've read the collection is that I really believe that it would be the perfect book to analyze in a class setting, and it would gain a lot more meaning, especially in regards of the individual poems. So yeah, go check out my blog post. Then I read sort of a graphic memoir, and it is All Absolutely Fine by Ruby Elliot, and that got 4 stars from me. The basic concept is it's just a collection of those small little panels of a situation the author experienced and stuff like that. And I really think the book managed to being very funny, but also relatable if you are struggling with the same issues, and very serious and very personal. And I really appreciated that, especially with the addition of just regular text throughout the drawings, and that really worked well for me and gave the whole collection a little bit more context, which I think definitely benefited from it, and I would definitely recommend it. Then I read an interesting one, and that is The Wicked Deep by Shea Ernshaw. At the end, I gave it 4 stars. This was a gift by my friend Whitney over at Reading Novels. Again, this was a pretty interesting one for me. For the majority of the time of reading this book, it was 3.5 stars for me. But then around the 225 page mark, which is probably where the big reveal happened, it actually really turned around for me. So like the big reveal doesn't really happen at the end. Throughout the whole novel though, I found the writing really beautiful and very quote-worthy. Although I have to admit that in the present day narrative, we sort of have 2 narratives, the writing style felt a little bit more heavy-handed, but overall it did work for me. The past with sort of like the Swan sister narrative and storyline was definitely my absolute favorite part of this book, and that probably explains why I like the last part of this book so much. If you have read it, you will probably know. So the book is about this town where about 200 years ago, 3 sisters got drowned by the townspeople for being witches. And now they are hunting this town and come back every year, every summer, to take the bodies, or take over the bodies of 3 girls of this town and drown and lure boys into this spell and drown them in the sea as a revenge. And we follow Pipper, I think that was her name, yes, who is living on an island near the town, and sort of her involvement with the town. And again, I do have to say that I definitely predicted that big reveal, and I don't believe that it was actually written to be a shocking twist, because for me personally there were just too many hints planted too carefully to for you not to guess that as a reader, I guess. So I don't really think that it was meant to shock you, because it personally, for me, it didn't shock me. But I do have also to say that knowing the twist didn't really take something away from the story for me. So if that's something you're worried about, I think that didn't bother me personally. My personal biggest issue, however, was that I felt that I lacked a connection to the present day characters. Again, it was told from the point of view of the Swan sisters, which are the 3 women who were drowned for being witches, or accused of being witches. And I felt like the present day characters just paled in comparison to the flashbacks. And the same goes for the central romance in the present day. And I just didn't feel like it was built all too well, and it had no real base except of them just being in the same place. And the story in the first half would have actually worked a lot better, especially in regards of such a strong plot and how much it builds on this romance if it was just built stronger. I only really started to feel something, again, as I said, when that big reveal happened. But I do have to say I really, really enjoyed the ending, and that really turned it around for me. And I will definitely for sure pick up the other works by this author. So yeah, there's that. And then I read another poetry collection, and that is Yesterday I Was the Moon by Noor Unnahar. I hope I said it remotely right. I tried to look it up. And I gave this one 4 stars as well. So this is a collection of more short free-verse poems. And in the front there was a paragraph where the author described this as a memoir in verse, which I personally found very fitting. Because it definitely felt very, very personal. I found the poems really moving and powerful, especially because you're looking at it through this personal lens, through the author's experience. And I felt the imagery was very nice and fitting to the experience. Sometimes it got a little bit repetitive, but not overbearingly so. So yeah, I think that is something that happens to me with modern poetry collections often. But I would definitely pick up something else by this author too. So I gave this one 4 stars. Now on to a very hyped book on here, and that is Red, White and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This was probably on everyone's favorite list of the year, and I personally really, really loved it as well. I gave it 4.5 stars. And yes, I do have to admit that At first, I struggled a little bit to get into it. And I want to preface two things, and I mentioned them in my Goodreads review as well. For me personally, at times I felt like the portrayal of the UK in this one was definitely more of an Americanized version of the UK. So keep that in mind, especially if you are from the UK. I've seen several people mention that in their reviews of this book. And also it is marketed as enemies to lovers, and the enemies part of enemies to lovers only lasted about 50 pages, I would say. And it's probably more of a cover-up for the one main character's obsession with the other. And I personally didn't mind that because I don't think I'm particularly into enemies to lovers. But I felt like because it is marketed like that, I think it's important to mention that it didn't really take up too much space of that, in my opinion. So this book is basically, we have the first son of the United States and the Prince of Wales, of the UK, Prince of Wales. Henry Prince of Wales is what his full name is. And they sort of have like a small conflict at an event. And to appease the public, they have to fake a friendship, and that could potentially turn into something more. It's a romance book, so and we also follow the re-election of the president, his mother, which is an important part because it was the first female president of the United States. So it's sort of what would have happened if Trump would have not been elected. So yeah, that's the premise. Again, keep those two things in mind. But this book really does have a lot of heart and a lot of hope, especially in this setting. It was really, really funny. But I was also deeply, deeply moved, especially in the latter half of this book. There were so many moving parts, and they all really had to do with the connection of the characters and how authentically and effortlessly Casey McQuiston was able to write them and portray them in a way that it really was easy to fall for them. And I heard it described as political escapism, especially in regards of the current political climate, and I would 100% say this is the case, and it is definitely needed. And I feel like the hope and strength that this book provides, not only on a political level but also on a personal level, dealing with grief and exploring yourself and coming to terms with your identity. I truly cannot imagine how important this book has to be for people in the United States in the current climate they live in, but also in regards of sexuality and grief. In that regards, it was definitely also very important for me personally. I really enjoyed how it kept the balance between politics and relationship, and how this all sort of connected with each other, and I thought it was really put off well. I really like exploring politics in books, be that contemporary but also in a fantasy setting. So yeah, I highly enjoyed this one. So I can already tell that this is going to be an extremely long version of this podcast, but I hope you are still around. Next, I read 2 poetry collections, and those are Soft in the Middle by Shelby Eileen, which I gave 3 stars. If you look it up, it has a stunning cover, and I truly would have hoped that it would work more for me. Unfortunately, I have to say that it mostly didn't work for me. Although I have to say that I highly appreciate the messages of this collection, and I just personally didn't, for example, see any reason behind how it was grouped. It was very loosely grouped. The language for me personally was too simplistic. I did, however, enjoy the poems that were a bit longer, and I appreciated the messages again. I didn't dislike it, but I didn't really love it, so 3 stars for me. The other poetry collection I've read is Memories Unwound by Ruby Dhal. I gave this one 3.5 stars, which it is a strong 3.5 stars. The poems definitely resonated more with me than Soft in the Middle. And I connected especially strongly to the emotions that they transported, which is, as I can tell from the preface of this collection, something that Ruby Dhal really wanted to convey. I do feel like that the collection would have benefited from being a little bit shorter, because it got a bit repetitive at times, and some of the poems felt a little bit too cliche, which unfortunately I often come across with modern poetry collections nowadays. But I will definitely look out for the author's other works. Now, the book I've just finished yesterday is a non-fiction book, and that is That Girl's Essays on Surviving on an American Obsession by Alice Bolin, which I gave 3.5 stars. I personally was very excited for this collection. So while I did like some parts of this, as you can see, I did 3.5 stars. Overall, it was definitely a little bit disappointing. Because first and foremost, this is probably my prime example for false marketing. Because the blurb sort of suggests, and especially the subtitle, the exploration of the dead girl trope. And that really only takes up a small part of this collection. The other focuses on the general experience of womanhood, the dead girl trope being just only one of many, but also the author experience of moving to LA and growing up in Idaho. And loads and loads and loads and loads of mentions of Trendidian. And I don't really understand why it wasn't marketed that way, because it works. It works for me personally. I still think it works as a collection. And I think I can see a string throughout the collection, but I just don't understand why it wasn't marketed like that. And I think it would have been more successful if it was. Because I did enjoy the points raised and the insights given. Although I do have to say that I sometimes found the delivery also a little bit chaotic and heavy-handed within the essays. I it felt like she was losing her point throughout the whole thing. And the author's voice sometimes was a bit off-putting, as she somehow manages to truly make everything about herself. The essay, The Daughter as Detective, was a prime example for that. She basically starts off just shit-talking everything her dad likes to read in like crime fictions, and then somehow turns this essay into an exploration of his possible autism his possible autism, which is just weird that you start off an essay about that with just slamming everything your dad likes. I just didn't understand. But I would definitely pick up something else by this author, because I did find myself compelled and invested in her writing style. But if you decide to pick up this collection, which I would still definitely recommend, just please keep in mind that the marketing is definitely slightly off for this one. So quickly, what I'm currently reading is The Diviners by Libba Bray. I started it last night, 10 pages in, and why has no one told me how well this book is written? It is glorious writing. There was a paragraph or multiple paragraphs where the wind sort of narrated a story, so it's incredible. I cannot wait to talk to you more about this. Now quickly on to what I've watched. And I've watched 2 things and 2 seasons of 2 things, not like 1 season each. And that is Sex Education season 2. And I even enjoyed it more this time around, or like the more than the first season. Can you tell I just want to keep it short, but oh well. I definitely enjoyed it more than the first season. The first season was amazing. Eric probably is my favorite, although I love them all. The bus scene is probably one of the most powerful scenes in TV history. So yeah, absolutely adored it. If you have not watched it yet, please do. Then I watched Chilling Adventures of Sabrina season 3, or like part 3. I really loved this as well. Not so much as the other seasons, but it was definitely still very strong. Both Sex Education and Chilling Adventures of Sabrina are definitely favorites of all time. Probably my 2 favorite series. But I just don't know my feelings about it yet completely, but I still really, really loved it. And I highly recommend the series as a whole. And this season brought in more elements that I really enjoyed, and truly Zelda Spellman now owns me. So yeah, that's what I've watched. If you want more thoughts, you can always ask in the comments section, because there's one thing that I still need to talk about, and that is my book buying rules for this year. I set myself some rules so I don't excessively buy books this year, which I did in the previous years, and I posted them on Twitter to hold myself accountable. And I will also talk to you about those on here real quick. And those rules are that I am allowed to buy in a month. Firstly, my anticipated releases for the month. I will not mention every single one now here. I will write them down in the description box, so go check that out so it doesn't take ages. So I'm allowed to buy my anticipated releases for the month. Then I am allowed to buy sequels of books I've read in that month, and a maximum of 3 backlist titles, so not more than 3 backlist titles 2019 or before that. Exceptions are if I am in a bookstore, I can buy 2 more books in total, but they have to be read within a month of buying them. So yeah, that was my very lengthy edition of Miriam Talks About Things. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, check the description box for my anticipated releases and let me know if one of them is on your list as well, and if you would like to talk about them a bit more in another video or another episode where we have a little bit more time. So yeah, thanks for listening, and I hope it wasn't too long and you enjoyed it, and I will talk to you in the next one. Bye.